Hello, I'm Hilary McClure, Multimedia Director at Cybercrime Magazine. Welcome to Let's Talk SOC, a Cybercrime Magazine podcast series brought to you by Secureworks, a leader in cybersecurity, empowering security and IT teams worldwide to accelerate effective security operations. Joining me today is Chris Bell, Vice President of Strategy, Corporate Development, and Strategic Alliances at Secureworks. Welcome, Chris. So great to have you with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
So, Chris, quickly, before we dive into a conversation around cyber insurance, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your background and role at Secureworks?
Absolutely. So just as you mentioned, I lead our corporate development, corporate strategy, and then our strategic alliances and strategic programs. One of our strategic programs is cyber insurance. So it's one of the critical growth areas, not only in the market, but also an area we're investing in heavily. But from my background standpoint, come from an engineering background, moved into product management, getting more to the business side of things, and now very much in a strategic role to ultimately grow the business and make sure we have our keen eye on the market and where the business is moving. And we see much more opportunity with cyber insurance over time. If you just look at the CAGR growth there and where we expect many opportunities, much is going to come via the cyber insurance domain.
Excellent. And yeah, absolutely. Cyber insurance is definitely growing and we're hearing more and more about it. I'm speaking to more and more guests about it. So I guess from your perspective, Chris, to start off that conversation, what value does cyber insurance provide to a customer?
I mean, it's a very valuable risk management tool. It protects organizations in their balance sheet, right, from a catastrophic event that can put some smaller organizations under. It can have a material impact to larger organizations, especially public organizations reporting to the board. I don't have to preach to anyone. If you turn on the news, there's enough preaching done there on all the cyber events that you see. So it is a valuable risk management tool, but ultimately it's a reactive tool, right? So you can't just have cyber insurance. You also need to invest in many of the cybersecurity resources, people, process, and technology to pair with your cyber insurance policy to protect yourself.
Excellent. And what activities should security professionals take to ensure that they're aligned with their cyber insurance program? I know that that's something that folks can struggle with.
First and foremost, if you have a cyber insurance policy, you just need to ask some key questions, right? Is it a robust policy or is it just a rider off of your other policy? If you do have a policy, some great questions I would say to ask your insurance broker would be to help me better understand, what does my policy cover, right? How much insurance do I have? What constitutes a covered event? Because many policies differ. They can differ greatly. How do I make a claim? Should I call my insurer? Should I call the breach coach? Should I email you? So really just think of that plan in the event of a malicious event happening, right? And then lastly, I would just say, are there limitations around the vendors? And this was actually one of the most important ones of what vendors can I use? And if you have a preferred vendor, get ahead of that, right? And let your insurer know, this is my preferred vendor. Here's who I have my incident management retainer, and say, I really prefer to use this vendor. And then they can actually work with that vendor to make sure that you're on the panel and you're covered if you do have a malicious event that happens in your environment.
And so, where should organizations be focusing their efforts? And I'm thinking about, should they be focusing on prevention, mitigation, insurance, or is it really a mix? I'd love to hear more from you on that.
It's a mix, right? You really need a holistic coverage around prevention, detection, response, as well as insurance. If prevention could solve all problems, prevention answer or prevention software that protects you against 100% of threats, and there was that silver bullet, you wouldn't see the industry growing like it does, and it's growing every year, year over year for decades. So you need a holistic story, with prevention being part of that, but really detection of detecting what breaks through your prevention controls and then knowing how to respond and remediate will all be key. I like to really use an analogy. If you think of many people have fire insurance, most people have fire insurance, right? But if you have fire insurance, you still have smoke detectors, right? So you still need a detector, right? And detection capabilities to know there's a fire happening. A similar story with home insurance or burglary insurance. If you have burglary insurance, sure, that will help you get back on your feet if someone does steal your critical assets and help you cover some of those costs. But that doesn't mean that you should leave your front door open. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't have an alarm system that's monitored, right? So you really need that full story of detectors, detection capabilities. You need someone monitoring and managing your environment. And much of that starts with security platform like Taegis XDR and security services from Secureworks or from a multitude of partners that are out there.
Right. That makes sense. And what's the difference between a covered cyber insurance cost versus a cybersecurity investment? I think that's another point where folks can get a lot of questions from decision makers up the chain, people writing checks, et cetera.
Yeah, it makes sense. And cyber insurance, the intent is to indemnify customers, right? So it's to cover costs like outside legal counsel or forensic investigations, third parties that were impacted, public relations, crisis communications, and business interruption costs. So there's a whole host of costs it does cover. A cybersecurity investment is ultimately something to enhance your security posture and your security tooling so that it doesn't happen in the future, like a cloud native XDR platform. If you think of a cyber insurance policy, if you are breached or if the customer is breached, after that breach, after you recover, you get the check, and you're even from a financial standpoint, your security posture is not any better than it was on day one when that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my final question for you, Chris, would be, is there anything else you would want listeners to know about cyber insurance as we wrap up the conversation?
Sure. Cyber insurance is going to continue to grow. What I do want the audience to know is one great way to lower your cyber insurance premium is to make sure you have instrumented your environment the correct way and message that back to your insurer so they know that you're not at risk, right? You're very insurable. We're seeing more and more companies actually, they're not insurable after they've had a multitude of events. So just to get ahead of it, right? That's what I challenge all organizations to do is to get ahead of it. You don't want ultimately to be in the news. You don't want to be uninsurable. So the way to do that is reach out to a trusted advisor like Secureworks and help them manage your risk, lower your risk, get the controls in place. So you're a great candidate for cyber insurance. You can have low premiums and you can make sure that your IT team, your CISO, your board can sleep at night, knowing that you're protected from malicious threat actors out there.
Wonderful. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing with us your expertise. This was a great conversation about cyber insurance. So just thank you so much for taking the time.
And thank you.